What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks again for tuning in. Today we're taking a look at Apple's stock. We'll be looking at the stock chart, kind of throwing some technical analysis in, and then we're also going to be looking at some other details on Apple stock as well, like market cap and how much cash flow they have on hand. Because a lot of people have been asking about Apple, and now that Apple is cruising into all-time highs, as it has been for quite some time now, I thought it'd be a good idea to make a video and kind of show you guys a different perspective on Apple to maybe help you guys understand just how big the company is and just how well they're doing, okay? So what we're looking at right now on the screen is some information regarding not only Apple, but a couple other companies' market capitalization, or commonly known as market cap, and I'll touch on market cap in just a second. So on the left are all these different companies from Apple, Microsoft, Google, Alibaba, etc. And on the right, this is in billions. These numbers on the right represent their market cap in billions, as you can see here in this little box. So since we're doing this video on Apple, Apple is number one on the list here. They have the highest market capitalization currently. Now, for those of you that don't know, basically what that means is Apple plays an extremely big role, or is an extremely big participant in the market. They have, or Apple has, some of the biggest sway or control in the market, shall we say. A good way to think of market cap is like a sports team. I always use sports team as examples, okay? So think of all these companies right here all being on the same team. Okay, they're all team red, okay? And Apple is essentially the biggest player on the team. And if you were to take out Apple, or if Apple got injured and had a bad knee and wasn't really performing great or performing well at all over half of the season, there's a good chance that Team Red might end up losing the season, not making the playoffs. So the way that you can think about Apple is if Apple got a bum knee or a bad ankle for a couple weeks and started performing terrible or performing bad, Apple in itself could help drag down the overall stock market because Apple has such a big role and is such a big participant in the market. So to kind of give you guys a different perspective, that's how big Apple is. They are so big that they themselves can essentially move the market to some extent, okay? Now, another thing we're going to look at here is on this next tab. And we're going to try and make this video pretty quick. So again, follow along, hopefully keep up. This next tab, this is from CNBC. This is pretty much the most reliable one I could find so far in terms of dates. This one was done on November 7th. I found one on November 11th, but you know, the numbers were pretty much the same, so I figured I'd use CNBC.com. Now, what we're looking at here is just a simple breakdown of the companies. I think it's like the top 10 companies with the most cash on hand. The way to think about most cash on hand is basically just like yourself. How much cash do you have in the bank, or how much cash do you have on hand if shit hits the fan and you need to spend some money here, take care of some things here? How much money do you have on hand? That's a big proponent to a successful business. You will notice that most successful businesses end up having quite a bit of cash on hand. Let's look at the top 10 companies with cash on hand. Microsoft, that's a really big, solid company. Berkshire Hathaway, really big, solid company. Google, really big, solid company. Apple, Facebook, Amazon, etc., etc., etc. All really big, well-known companies have a pretty decent amount of cash on hand. But that's not also surprising. It should be that way, because if the biggest companies have the most cash on hand, that would make sense because they are the biggest companies and they make the most money, meaning they should have the most money on hand. Unless they are really irresponsible with their money and spend it like crazy on things that don't matter, just like an individual person. Imagine you, your brothers, and your sisters, right? What if your brother was a doctor and made way more money than you, and you were just maybe, you know, in marketing, right, or something, who knows, and makes a bunch of more money than you, and then you guys compare bank accounts, you have more cash on hand than him. That just goes to show that he might be spending his money irrational or on things that don't matter. So this is a good way to view what companies have a lot of cash on hand and who are prepared for bad times or for negative things that might happen in their business along the way. So just taking a look at market capitalization and then taking a look at the cash on hand for Apple, it's clear to see that Apple is a major player within the stock market. And then secondly, they are very, very high on the list. I believe they're number 4. You have Microsoft, Berkshire, Google, and then Apple ranks number 4 here on this chart for cash on hand. They have $100 billion just kind of sitting around in that company. So very solid. All right. Now, when we go and actually look at Apple's chart, you're going to see that Apple is currently, this is a 3-year chart. This is Apple currently into all-time highs up here at 270, 275.30. So currently Apple's just cruising into all-time highs. Okay. Now, if we look at over maybe a 10-day chart here, maybe a little bit, we'll do a 4-hour chart. So if we look at this 4-hour chart, what we notice, or maybe a pattern, some might argue that there was kind of an inverse head and shoulders right here. And it's kind of lopsided, kind of an uptrending inverse head and shoulders. Okay, you might argue that. Some might just kind of argue it's like a pennant that was meant to break up. But nonetheless, we do have a breakout here that's leading into a new high. Now I want to put it on a daily chart. It's just a daily time frame. So right now, the chart is very solid. We have very nice trend. It's going up. Now, on Friday or even Thursday would have been a really good time to be buying Apple for the breakout. As you can see, we kind of just broke out. So there's really good movement over the past or last 2 trading days here of last week for Apple. Now, there's also a good chance that we're going to see Apple continue on this move higher, either Monday or going into next week. And there's a couple reasons why I would say that. If we look at the daily chart on Apple, for one, look how strong it closed on the day, right? It really gave back almost no gains that it made at the top of Friday, right? If we go look at the 1-minute chart, Apple pretty much went up all day and then just stayed there, right? Kind of up, down, but ultimately closed at the highs. Never really kind of sold off from the highs in the day. So pretty solid day nonetheless. Maybe not the best trending day, but a good day. So if we look at the daily chart, again, it's closed very strong. Now let's take a look at, let me pull this volume up. Okay, so we have, pretty decent buying volume going on, all right? And the chart is very well intact. So for those of you asking questions on Apple, at this moment, as I've been saying for kind of the past couple weeks too, no other reason to be bearish on Apple. At this point, would strongly recommend being bullish on Apple, very much so. But I do have to mention one thing, all right? Since Apple, again, has such a high market capitalization and it's such a big player in the game of the market, whenever the overall market, okay, let me put a chart here side by side. All right, so this is the S&P 500. This is an ETF. Now, you're going to notice that on days where the market has bad days, Apple's normally going to be going down, okay? Because you got to remember that the S&P 500 is really just 500 companies, okay? And Apple is one of those 500 companies, okay? And Apple has the number one, I'm just going to do MRKT and cap. Remember, they have the number one market cap right now. So they, in essence, are the biggest player and, again, have the biggest sway on the overall market, which is the SPY. So on days where Apple's having a really good day, Apple in itself can help kind of pull the market in a positive direction. And on days where Apple might be having a really bad day, it can sort of drag down the market from having a good day. Now, if all the stocks, right, let's say like Caterpillar, Facebook, Google, maybe NVIDIA, maybe a lot of the other big companies in the market are having a bad day, and Apple say it wasn't supposed to have a bad day. Maybe Apple is set to have a really good day, but when the market opened, all these big major stocks started having really poor days. They in themselves could drag down the SPY. And again, since Apple's such a big market cap in the SPY, just by the SPY dropping again, that's going to pour over into Apple and you're going to see a negative day. So for those of you talking about Apple, I would stay bullish on the stock, but do also note that it's closely and very heavily tied into the overall market. So for those of you involved with Apple and wanting to trade on Apple, it's very important to keep up the Dow Jones and keep up, the S&P 500 to get an understanding of where the market's at, how the market's trading, where it's heading, and that will give you a better understanding of just how Apple's probably going to perform as well on any given day. So I hope you guys liked the video, and I hope you learned something new. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button before you head out so we can spread the word on these videos. And as always, thank you guys again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.